Okay, let's look at what's happened in the light of the Yod-He-Vav-He formula. Believe it or not, when we started the Mass, our He final, our unredeemed daughter, our sleeping beauty, is the priest in the tomb, slumbering in Malkuth. The Nepish, the animal soul with amnesia, trapped in a tomb of matter and flesh. The esoteric meaning of the entire Judeo-Christian symbolism of the fall of man scenario puts the vast majority of the population perpetually in this condition and is happy to leave us there. Our sleepy little princess in the tomb is awakened by the handsome prince, currently played by the priestess, who wields the sword of reason, the Vav of the Tetragrammaton. She is the Ruach, the intellect part of the soul. She then purifies and consecrates the priest and prepares him for what he soon must do. In other words, it is the Ruach, the intellect, who awakens and purifies the Nepish, the animal soul, and will eventually take it as her lover. We now move to part 4, the ceremony of the opening of the veil. At the beginning of the ceremony of the opening of the veil, the polarity shift is profound. Not only has the priest become, at the hands of the priestess, the Vav of the Tetragrammaton, but the whole environment of the temple has also changed. Nobody has moved any furniture, but now our focus has shifted. The priest says, "Thee therefore whom we adore, we also invoke, by the power of the lifted lance." It's the power of the lifted lance, not the lance, that will upraise the Virgin, pure without spot. He raises the lance, and all repeat hailing sign, to affirm they know who the Lord in this recipe is. There's a phrase of triumphant music. The priest takes the priestess by her right hand with his left, keeping the lance raised. The priest says, "I, priest and king." Even though he's identifying himself as king, he is not yet the Yod of our formula, but still the Vav. He's really more like a prince. "I, priest and king, take thee virgin, pure, without spot."
The law is for all, says the logic of the Ruach, the normal intellect, is transcended in the spiritual experience, unquote. Every spiritual experience is new, that is, virgin.
"I upraise thee, I lead thee to the east." Now it's his turn to raise her. "I set thee upon the summit of the earth."
Setting the daughter upon the throne of the mother.
He thrones the priestess upon the altar. Summit of the earth. Now, does that mean the summit of Malkuth? What's going on? What's Malkuth have to do with it? Isn't the high altar across the abyss up there in the supernal triad? Well, the answer is yes, during the parts of the ceremony when we are viewing it with our wide-angle lens, at least. Now, however, Mr. DeMille, we're ready for our close-up. We've all seen the diagram of the Tree of Life with a miniature Tree of Life in every sephira. At this point of the ceremony, we turn our microscope up upon the high altar and see its component Tree of Life. Now, the instructions don't specifically state that the priestess takes her seat in the center of the altar. Indeed, one could interpret the instruction in such a way that the priestess could theoretically sit toward the left side of the altar or the right side of the altar. Indeed, she could sit anywhere on the altar as long as she does not knock over the two great candles or the roses. But common sense and balance suggests that she is seated in the center of the altar. So that is where Constance, and indeed every priestess we've ever seen celebrate Mass, is seated. That being said, I would also like to point out that the priestess is not instructed to physically sit down directly upon the cup and the paten, something that would be unreasonably painful even for the largest and most accommodating sister. No, nor is she or anyone else instructed
What?
Nor is she or anyone else instructed to move the cup and paten before sitting down. Crowley does indicate in the directions, however, that, quote, there is room in front of the cup for the paten. Not behind, not to the left, not to the right. So that we know when they are on the altar, the cup and paten are together. That means in order for the priestess to avoid sitting down upon the cup and paten, they should be positioned either to her left or to her right before she takes her seat upon the summit of the earth. We choose to position them on her left.
The deacon and the children follow, they in rank behind him. The priestess takes the book of the law, resumes her seat, and holds it open on her breast with her two hands, making a descending triangle with thumbs and forefingers. Now, trying to follow these directions strictly, after I am initially seated, I immediately halfway rise up, turn and take the book of the law, resume my seat, and hold it open against my breast.
The classic tarot image of the high priestess. On the altar, flanked by the two pillars, with the book of the law in her hands. In our case, she holds it to her breast in the sign of 3 = 8, or Aramoth, water, the primal female, showing that although she may be sitting on the throne of the earth, Malkuth, the hay final, she is, by virtue of the law, the Word, the Holy Spirit, ready to assume the role of hay, the supernal water. The priest gives the lance to the deacon to hold, and takes the ewer from the child and sprinkles the priestess. One good turn deserves another. Now it's his turn to purify with water and consecrate her with fire in preparation for her transformation from hay final to hay. Making 5 crosses on the forehead, shoulders, and thighs. Now 5 is the number of hay, drawn in the form of an upright pentagram. The thumb of the priest is always between his index and medius whenever he's not holding the lance. It's a phallic mudra, just the opposite of the priestess who uses the open hand. The priest takes the censer from the child and makes 5 crosses as before. The children replace their weapons on their respective altars. The priest kisses the book of the law 3 times. He kneels for a space in adoration with joined hands, knuckles closed, thumb in position aforesaid. He rises and draws the veil over the whole altar. The priest is treating the area of the high altar now as the supernal triad by drawing the veil of the abyss. All rise and stand to order. The priest takes the lance from the deacon and holds it as before, as Osiris or Ptah. He circumambulates the temple 3 times, followed by the deacon and the children as before. These, when not using their hands, keep their arms crossed upon their breast.
At the last circumambulation, they leave him and go to the place between the font and the small altar, where they kneel in adoration, their hands joined palm to palm and raised above their heads. All imitate this motion.
This position could also be considered a yogic posture. The longer we remain in this position, the more our consciousness and perception is altered.
I think this gesture symbolizes the flame of the hearts of all that Nuit is calling forth in her love chant. In The Law is for All, Crowley comments that the secret of magic is to inflame oneself in praying. It is at this point in the Mass when we, by devotion, activate the formula of the goddess within ourselves. We become what we love.
The priest returns to the east and mounts the first step of the altar. The priest says, "O circle of stars." Now the body of Nuit, the expanding universe of stars, our galaxy, our universe, whereof our Father, the Sun, is but the younger brother. Astronomers tell us our sun is the third or fourth generation star. Marvel beyond imagination, soul of infinite space. Here we have our definition of what we are invoking. Circle of stars equals soul of infinite space. Every man and every woman is a star. Before whom time is ashamed. The fragile continuum of time is confounded by the immensity of space. Indeed, space and time are one. The mind bewildered and the understanding dark. Our minds can't comprehend it. Not unto thee may we attain unless thine image be love.
Lucky for us, Nuit is an all-accepting goddess of infinite possibilities, with continually changing fresh aspects that can keep us all interested. A quote from The Law is for All, she is not the mere star goddess, but a far higher thing, dimly veiled by that unutterable glory, unquote. And from Liber Aleph, blessed be she that offereth beauty and ecstasy in the orgasm of every change, and that exciteth thy wonder and thy worship by the contemplation of her mind many-willed.
Therefore by seed and root and stem and bud and leaf and flower and fruit do we invoke thee. We invoke by the complete cycle of the momentum of life.
Love equals change.
Now the priest invokes all this in the person of the goddess Nuit. What follows is taken directly from chapter 1, verse 27 of the Book of the Law. We will read it without comment. Then the priest answered and said unto the Queen of Space, kissing her lovely brows, and the dew of her light bathing his whole body in a sweet-smelling perfume of sweat, O Nuit, continuous one of heaven, let it be ever thus, that men speak not of thee as one, but as none, and let them speak not of thee at all, since thou art continuous.
During this speech, the priestess must have divested herself completely of her robe.
This is the time in the Mass to adore the goddess. The moment when the erotic imagination of the priest and the congregation should be tangibly aroused. No matter what the priestess decides about re-robing after the veil is parted, she must, for the duration of Nuit's speech, be completely naked. To omit this gesture in the privacy of the veiled altar we feel is unexcusable. At all my meetings with you shall the priestess say, and her eyes shall burn with desire as she stands bare and rejoicing in my secret temple, to me, calling forth the flame of the hearts of all in her love chant. The priestess answers as the goddess. What follows is taken directly from chapter 1, verse 61 of the Book of the Law.
The priestess says, "But to love me is better than all things. If, under the night stars in the desert, thou presently burnest mine incense before me, invoking me with a pure heart, and the serpent flame therein, thou shalt come a little to lie in my bosom. For one kiss wilt thou then be willing to give all. But whoso gives one particle of dust shall lose all in that hour. Ye shall gather goods and store of women and spices. Ye shall wear rich jewels. Ye shall exceed the nations of the earth in splendor and pride, but always in the love of me. And so shall ye come to my joy. I charge you earnestly to come before me in a single robe, and covered with a rich headdress. I love you. I yearn to you. Pale or purple, veiled or voluptuous, I who am all pleasure and purple, and drunkenness of the innermost sense, desire you. Put on the wings, and arouse the coiled splendor within you. Come unto me, to me, to me. Sing the rapturous love song unto me. Burn to me perfumes, wear to me jewels, drink to me. For I love you, I love you. I am the blue-lidded daughter of sunset. I am the naked brilliance of the voluptuous night sky. To me, to me. This is straight from the Book of the Law. Nuit is speaking as the totality of possibilities. Even our holy prophet had very little to comment upon it in the Laws for All. It partially states, "It is evident," quote, "that Our Lady, in her personality, contemplates some more or less open form of worship suited for the laity. With the establishment of the law, something of this sort may become possible. P.S. The Gnostic Mass is intended to supply this need, Liber 15, unquote. I personally tend to emphasize the word always as if this were only a partial list, not a list of commandments, and anything that you do that is your true will is acceptable to Nuit. As the Laws for All states, quote, "By that act, whatever it is, one worships, loves, possesses, and becomes Nuit." And from the Book of the Law, "My ecstasy is in yours. My joy is to see your joy." In this way, Nuit is speaking to everyone personally. All those acts which excite the divine in man are proper to the rite of invocation.
The priest mounts the second step. The invocation of Nuit is complete. The priest now invokes Hadit in himself. The priest says, "O secret of secrets, that art hidden in the being of all that lives." Recall in the Book of the Law, Hadit says, "Come, all ye, and learn the secret that hath not yet been revealed. I, Hadit, in the complement of Nu, my bride, I am not extended. And Cobbs is the name of my house. In the sphere I am everywhere the center, as she the circumference is nowhere found. Yet she shall be known, and I never. Not thee do we adore, for that which adoreth is also thou." Who worshipped Ruparkrat have worshipped me ill, for I am the worshipper. Thou art that, and that am I. What follows is directly from the Book of the Law, chapter 2, verse 6 and 23. "I am the flame that burns in every heart of man, and in the core of every star. I am life and the giver of life, yet therefore is the knowledge of me, the knowledge of death. I am alone. There is no God where I am.
The deacon and all rise to their feet with the hailing sign. The deacon says, "But ye, O my people, rise up and awake." Crowley says in the Laws for All, "Observe that we must rise up before we awake. Aspiration to the higher is a dream, a wish fulfillment which remains a phantasm to wheedle us away from seeking reality, unless we follow it up by action. Only then do we become fully aware of ourselves and enter into right reaction with the world in which we live. Wake up, my little Buddhas." This is me speaking. Experience the joy and beauty of each moment. Now is really all the time we have. Let the rituals be rightly performed with joy and beauty. There are rituals of the elements.
Rituals of the elements could mean any number of things, including the classic opening by Watchtower.
And feasts of the times.
Traditional observances of seasons, equinoxes, solstices, and cross quarters would not seem inappropriate.
A feast for the first night of the prophet and his bride.
August 12th, the date of the marriage of Rose and Crowley.
A feast for the 3 days of the writing of the Book of the Law.
Celebrated as April 8th, 9th, and 10th.
A feast for Tahuti and the child of the prophet. Secret, O prophet.
Sister Leda tells us that in the Egyptian tradition, the feast of Tahuti coincides each year with the appearance of Sirius and the festivals celebrating the inundation of the Nile, usually between July 19th and 23rd.
A feast for the supreme ritual, and a feast for the equinox of the gods.
The supreme ritual, which ushered in the equinox of the gods, took place on March 20th, 1904 EV.
A feast for fire and a feast for water, a feast for life and a greater feast for death.
Coming-of-age observances for boys and girls are feasts for fire and water. We are encouraged to celebrate the births and deaths of our fellows.
A feast every day in your hearts in the joy of my rapture, a feast every night unto new and the pleasure of uttermost delight.
This could indicate the daily performance of some form of ecstatic sexual worship. Crowley counsels everywhere the daily celebration of the Mass of the Holy Ghost. The priest mounts the third step. Now here comes the big invocation. Watch out for this one. Not only is the deity invoked, but precise landing coordinates are called out. The priest. Thou that art one, our Lord in the universe, the Son, our Lord in ourselves, whose name is mystery of mystery, uttermost being, whose radiance enlightening the worlds is also the breath that maketh every god, even in death, to tremble before thee. By the sign of light, appear, thou glorious upon the throne of the Son. Make open the path of creation and of intelligence between us and our minds. Enlighten our understanding, encourage our hearts. And here it comes. Let thy light crystallize itself in our blood, fulfilling us of resurrection. Akadua Trufurbiu Biachafu Dudu Nera Fanuteru, which Crowley tells us means, Unity uttermost showed. I adore the might of thy breath, supreme and terrible God, who makest the gods in death to tremble before thee. I adore thee.
The priestess says, there is no law beyond do what thou wilt. Our law is not know what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Read Liber Oz, the rights of man, concerning this. Power acts. Each man must act what he will, for he is energized by his own nature, unquote. We all know this from personal experience. When we are doing our will, it doesn't seem like work. Time flies by, and our supply of energy is almost boundless.
The Word has been made flesh. The priestess, having arrived at new eathood, is now the unambiguous He of the Tetragrammaton. The priest parts the veil with his lance.
During the previous speeches, the priestess has, if necessary, as in savage countries, resumed her robe. In my opinion, the decision whether or not to re-robe is entirely that of the priestess. During her speech, the priest and the congregation should have been sufficiently aroused by imagining the naked goddess beckoning them from behind the veil. I choose to re-robe, but I don't wish to influence any other priestess' decision in this matter.
I would like us to consider for a moment Crowley's use of the term savage country. We would all like to think, especially those of us in urban areas, that we don't live in a savage country. We're hip Thelemites, worshipping with other hip Thelemites. An environment where such hipness flourishes certainly couldn't be considered a savage country. We see nudity all the time. Every decent movie has nude scenes. What could possibly be objectionable about a naked woman seated politely upon an altar for an hour or so? In my opinion, there is nothing objectionable about a naked woman seated upon an altar. In the last 35 years, I've seen lots of naked women on altars. Yes, I have, dear. But in this day and age, when the Roman Catholic Church is finally getting some of what it deserves, we should be especially careful about nudity in services where children may be present. Experience with police and child custody battles continue to remind us we might still be living in a savage country. Okay, let's remember where we were. The priest has just parted the veil with his lance and unveiled the manifest goddess. At this dramatic moment, he intones a litany of Gnostic male deities. I don't see this as an invocation per se. It's more like an elaborate expletive, an awestruck invitation to those aspects of horny deity that can join him in appreciating this moment. He now says, "Ee-ho, ee-ho, ee-ho." Now we could view the two-letter word Eo as a Gnostic equivalent of yin and yang, the I, the ultimate male pointy thing, and the O, the ultimate female opening. These simple and obvious qualities certainly qualify Eo as a divine name. But traditionally, Eo has been used as a shout of invitation, a sort of "come and get me," shouted by the devotee to a deity. Iao, Sabao. Now, Sabao is an interesting divine name, and very pertinent to modern OTO. Sabao is Sabazius, the magical name taken by our U.S. Grand Master and Supreme and Holy King. I'm going to quote a little from Manly Hall here. The rites of Sabazius were very similar to those of Bacchus, and it's generally believed that the two deities are identical. Bacchus was born a Sabazius, or a Sabaoth, and these names are frequently assigned to him. The Sabazian mysteries were performed at night, and the ritual included the drawing of a live snake across the breast of the candidate. Quote, "A golden serpent was a symbol of Sabazius, because this deity represented the annual renovation of the world by solar power. The Jews borrowed the name Sabaoth from these mysteries and adopted it as one of the appellation of their supreme god. During the time of the Sabazian mysteries, in Rome, the cult gained many votaries. The latter influenced the symbolism of Christianity. Kyrie Abrasax, Lord Abrasax, or Abraxas, a word symbol consisting of 7 letters which signify the 7 creative powers or planetary angels. recognized by the ancients. Kyrie Mithras, the Persian solar deity. Most of the recognizable tenets of Christianity were stolen whole cloth from the worship of Mithras. Kyrie Phale, Lord Phallus. Io Pan. Pan is not only the mischievous god of Thracian shepherds, but a blind for a god who is everything. Pan means all. Io Pan Pan, Io Iskoros, Io powerful. Io Athanatos, Io deathless. Io Abratos, Io woundless. Io Iao. Kyrie Phale, hail Phallus. Kyrie Panphage, hail all-devourer. Kyrie Pangenitor, hail father of all. Hagios, 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 Iaho.
The priestess is seated with the paten in her right hand and the cup in her left. Now, we must assume that when the veil was first opened, was first closed, that is, when the veil was first closed, that she replaced the Book of the Law in its proper place on the high altar. And before the veil is opened, must have the paten with her right hand and the cup with her left hand.
The host, at this moment, is the unfertilized egg of the sun. Remember, the paten and host were not on the altar at the beginning of the ceremony. They were brought in by the priestess. If all goes well, the host will become the material basis for the body of God. In her left hand, the cup of wine, the sweet liquid joy of the earth. If all goes well, the wine will become the material basis for the blood of God. The priest presents the lance, which she kisses 11 times. Remember, 11 strokes at the beginning, when she was on her knees and she stroked the lance.
She then holds it to her breast, while the priest, falling at her knees, kisses them, his arms stretched along her thighs. Now, even though the priestess is portraying a goddess, she is still physically limited by only 2 hands. Therefore, common sense would suggest that she must set down the cup and paten before she holds the lance to her breast. And according to previous instructions, there is room in front of the cup for the paten. Not in back of the cup, not to the left of the cup, not to the right of the cup, not even separated from the cup. There is room in front of the cup for the paten.
The priest literally swoons with ecstasy as the result of the priestess's intimate gesture. He falls to his knees, overcome with rapture. For the time being, he's only capable of mindless, will-less, sloppy adoration. The priestess is already nuit, but she will remain unmanifest until the priest comes to full realization of his haditness.
You can't have one without the other. Quote, in nu is had concealed, by had is nu manifested.
To master himself, he will need to make himself part of the spiritual momentum of the great phallic heroes of all time. He remains in this adoration while the deacon intones the collects.
All stand to order with the due guard, that is, feet square, hands with linked thumbs held loosely. Due guard means God keep you, and in Masonry alludes to the position your hands were placed upon the volume of the sacred law when you took your solemn obligation. In this case, I guess we've replaced the Bible with our naughty bits. This is the universal position when standing, unless other direction is given. Part 5 of the Office of the Collects, which are 11 in number.